So I just want to demonstrate the stack out of the Fotoplayer a little bit here. And I'm going to do a repetition test. I've got a speed controlled motor here that rotates and opens a little pallet. Inside of this tube, there's a bleed cup shoved in there that I've drilled out to approximate the size of a smallish perforation in a piano roll. And then I've got about 3 feet of tubing on here to simulate the longest amount of tubing that would be likely to be encountered once the spool boxes and tracker bars are installed. And then looks like I've got about 13 inches of vacuum going on right now. So you can see we've got the primary valves operating if you want to go around to the other side. And of course the pneumatic is closing. But let's go ahead and do a little bit of a repetition test. This is probably as fast or faster right here than any upright piano action can repeat. So really your limitation is not going to be the player stack. If it's restored well, I'm going to increase the speed a little bit. But the piano action itself, you can see that goes at a pretty good clip. But the one thing that I wanted to demonstrate that I'm just really thrilled about is how incredibly airtight this stack is. If you'll recall, the last one I demonstrated was out of a reproducing mechanism, so the stack was divided down the middle. And so when I was testing each half, it was just half of the primary valves and half of the stack at a time. This is not a divided stack. So when I suck on this with my lungs, I'm getting all 88 secondary valves and all 88 primary valves. Why don't you come around this side and watch the vacuum gauge here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and evacuate this with just my lungs here. Okay. That's not bad with just lung power. And then of course, we can even have a note playing and do that. So I have to say I'm pretty excited about how tight this guy is. So I've got, in order of their use, all the punchings that I've used. This is a 30/1000 of an inch thick silicone sheet. Not a sponge or foam, just solid silicone. Of course, here's your metal disc. Then the actual vacuum side valve is about 60/1000 of an inch thick. It is solid silicone rubber, so about a 1/16 of an inch thick. Then the other metal plate, followed by a medium density silicone sponge. And then of course that's followed by your collar to hold that in place. And then you would either put another collar on if your valve well is deep enough, or then directly you would put on another solid silicone spacer or gasket, and then finally the outer valve. Now in the case of this piano, it was restored previously and somebody threw away the metal plates for the outer valves, and they had used sponge neoprene glued to fiber washers. And this failed because the hole became very enlarged in the sponge neoprene. I don't know if you can see that, but it no longer seals around the valve stem. There's a big, big air gap. The neoprene just does not have enough integrity to withstand, I guess, the weight of the disc holding it onto the stem. Or maybe the guy punched the holes too big. That's possible too, but he was pretty conscientious, so I don't think that was the case. Anyway, back to how these are constructed. So of course you have the end of the valve with the screw thread on it that goes toward the pouch. And so building up from there, first you put one of the silicone washers on, that's solid. Then you put your first smaller metal disc on. Then the valve, then the next disc, then the silicone sponge, and then you'll put your collar on. This one's loose on here, obviously, but you want to push that down so that it's just tight enough to keep that valve fully seated against the lower collar, but loose enough that you have some wobble in the valve so that in case there's a little bit of irregularity, it can seat. I like the silicone right here between the collar and the metal plate because it's perfectly flat and uniform. It doesn't corrode metal. The valve itself won't corrode metal, and neither will the silicone sponge. And so that gives you, something that's very airtight and long-lasting. And then on top of that would go another solid silicone washer, and then whatever you're using for your atmosphere side valve. So this is basically a completed valve with everything put together. Whoops, I didn't put my spacer in here. The sheet silicone is not there for air sealing at all. It's simply there to provide a cushion so that you don't get any clacking noise between the collar and the metal. And then also it gives you some slight cushion to help the valve wobble if need be. Now this is the material I use for the primary valves. For the outer or atmosphere side of the valve, I did a sandwich of lambskin on one side and silicone sheet, the 30 thousandths silicone, and the lambskin's about 25 thousandths. So that glued together provides lambskin on this side, which I can glue to the wooden valve button, and then silicone on this side, which seals against the wood. And then for the inside vacuum side of the primary valve, I used lambskin sealed on the grain side with 2 coats of diluted PVCE, and then of course nothing on the flesh or the nap side. And I will say that silicone seals really well to really smooth surfaces, so it's great for sealing against metal valve seats. Typically not great for sealing against wood unless you've sanded the wood with really fine sandpaper. What I did here was I gave this board a light coat of spray lacquer, sanded it with 600 grit sandpaper, gave it one more light coat, sanded it again, and then when it was well cured, slightly dampened it with denatured alcohol, and then rubbed in powdered graphite. So that creates a really, really smooth surface for the silicone sandwich to seal to. So that is basically how I did the valves on this.